I've never made a wooden vase before, and when I saw this pattern, I said to myself, I've got to give this a try. The design came from Steve Good. If you're unfamiliar with his website, you need to check it out. I'll give a link in the description. He publishes a free daily pattern on various subjects, enough to keep you happily scroll sawing for as long as you like. The sides are cut from 1/4 inch thick material, and I chose oak for this one. My supplier doesn't have 1/4 inch wood wide enough, so I planed a 1/2 inch board to 1/4 inch on my thickness planer. As always, I started with the inside cuts, and I'm using a number 3 Pegasus modified geometry blade. There aren't a huge number of inside cuts on this project, but some of them have sharp points, so it will be a good skill building exercise. So there I've got a sharp point. I cut down the middle to the point, and then I made a turn and followed the line and went all the way around. Now I'm going to go one of the points here, not a real sharp one. When I get to the point, I back off the blade a little bit, then I pivot the workpiece and start cutting in the next direction. Just take your time making the cuts. It doesn't matter what order you make them in. Cut carefully, but if you are a tiny bit off from time to time, it's unlikely it will ever be noticed on the finished product. There are several diamond-shaped cuts near the middle of the pattern. The corners will be a good place to practice making 90-degree turns, which are used in so many different designs. If you are going to do much cutting on the scroll saw, you will need to be skilled at making these turns. Starting at the pilot hole, make a cut in the waist area at one of the points. When you get to the point, ease off the pressure on the scroll saw blade so it is no longer cutting, then pivot the workpiece until it is facing in the direction you want to cut along the line. I usually cut in a clockwise direction. Cut until you get to the next point, then ease off on the blade pressure as before, swivel the workpiece, and start cutting in the next direction. The front and back of the vase have the same outside shape, but I had to make the inside cuts on the front first. Now, I could cut the front and back separately, but there are a couple of good reasons for stack cutting them. The first is that it will save a little bit of time, but the second, and most important, is that by stack cutting these two pieces, we know they will be identical, or they'll be congruent, as we learned in high school geometry class. The preparation for the process is simple. You start with the 2 1/4 inch rectangles for the front and back and place a couple of strips of double-sided tape across the front of one of the pieces. I generally place it on the back piece, but I suppose it doesn't matter. Peel the backing strip off the tape and then carefully line up the front piece before pressing it firmly into place. Now we can cut both of these at once on the scroll saw. The middle part of the vase, which will hold the flowers, is cut from 3/4 inch thick red oak. I'll make the cut with a number 9 Pegasus modified geometry blade. In case you are new to scroll sawing and not sure how to determine what size blade to use, I'll leave a link to my video on how to choose the correct blade size. The vase is cut as one long, gentle curve until you get to the bottom on the inside. Then you will need to make a square 90-degree turn, cut a straight line across the bottom, and make one more 90-degree turn before proceeding up the curve on the second side. The best way to make a 90-degree turn is to cut until you reach the point where the lines meet. When you reach that point, back off the pressure on the blade slightly so it is no longer cutting, pivot the workpiece 90 degrees, and put pressure on the blade to start cutting again. Continue to the next corner and repeat the procedure, then follow the line the rest of the way around the inside and outside. One reason this is a good project for a beginner is that the middle section will later be covered. Work to make the cuts as accurately as possible, but no one can see them once the vase is assembled. There we go. There's the middle section of the vase. We've got the double-sided tape removed from the back here. The back of the vase. That's going to go on there. Like that. And we remove the pattern from the front. Usually comes off like that in one piece. And there we go. I use a bottle with a small tip to apply the glue. Then I use my finger to spread it around. I want the surface to be fully covered so there's a good bond, but I don't want a lot of squeeze out. I plan on finishing this with a polyurethane spray, and that won't stick to dry glue. I added the top and lined it up with the sides. Then I set the vase aside for a few minutes so the glue would start to set. When first applied, the glue is slick and parts tend to slip around when you go to clamp them. By waiting a few minutes before you apply the clamps, you avoid this problem. I've got the vase I made here, and the sides are not bad, but not perfect. There's a couple spots where they need a little bit of trimming, and this one side here is pretty darn close to perfect. The other side's a little bit off, and so I want to trim that down. I'm going to use my handheld router. I did a review on that in case you haven't seen it. I've got this pad I've been using on my workbench for some time, but sometimes I'd like to raise up the workspace a little bit. So what I got just recently from a company called Chips Fly, and it's a set of lock blocks, and there's 4 to a set, and they've got these little dovetails so you can put them together. You could put these any way you can think of that those things will fit together, and I'm going to put that on top. This is not going to go anywhere, and with that on top of there, you can see that's pretty steady too. Flip it over. You definitely got a little bit of trim over that. Good. One of the things I like about that trim router is the battery version shuts off immediately. Now, what we really could use is a roundover on this as well. Nice. Good job. So we got the edges even, got a roundover. That's ready for some finish. Lock blocks work great. They were not that expensive. I can't remember. The price won't matter because that could change anyway. But I would definitely recommend them for routing and possibly some other routing, sanding, those kind of uses. And we'll sand the bottom with the disc sander, and then this will be ready for finish. Well, there's the finished vase. That's the first time I did anything like this. It's unusual. It was an interesting project. Other than that goof I made on the back where I tried the round over, it came out okay. So that's the bottom. The sides, got those nice and smooth with that flush trim bit, and you can see up here is where I decided, oh, let me round over this, but because there's nothing back here for the bit to write on, it kind of goofed that up. But you know, we all make mistakes from time to time. This is the first time I made this. I learned from the mistake. Maybe you can learn from my mistake as well. Let me know what you think of the project. Is something you'd like to try? Give me a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already done so. And there will be a suggestion for the next video to watch on the screen. Please stick around.